Okay. Wait, camera, what are you doing? So, Monday study is over. Sadly, I didn't see any Monday studies. No one is working hard but me. Tunnel Runner Part 3. Hey, boss, how's it going? Yeah, so I didn't have time to draw the monowheel, but I will do that today. I have a German tank as main ref, and I have the underneath all this junk here. I have the speeder racer ref just to help kind of have them in the same location or aesthetics. But I will mainly look at the American tank because in my mind these are American tunnel runners. That's why I made this boss. That's great, working from home office. That's why I made a rounder shape, because American, in my IP, they have rounder shape, and Germans are angular, more angular. Yeah, that's the difference. So I will be focusing on a little bit rounder shape for the monowheel, looking at the tank as main ref. I'm all good, busy, juggling all things that you need to do in life. Anyways, let's start. So, like I said before, I'll be drawing on the. Hey, Stonic, how's it going? Hey, Kirill, welcome back. How are you? So today I'll try to draw this up. I had this idea about there's an edge of metal, then obviously there's the, man, my lines are dog shit today. Then is those links, like the chain that drives it, right? That the teeth of the threads go through, so that it gets fed around, right? And then there you have these big blocks of metal. There should be a little bit of spacing in between each segment. Hey Kirill, how's work, by the way? Any success? I don't remember if you got, I think last time you said you got a new job, in-house job, or was it that you lost it and were looking for new? I can't remember. Hopefully you've solved your employment issue and everything is working out all right. All right. You got the job? Was on a vacation? Oh, nice. Kirill, you're working on mobile games? Ah, that's cool. That's cool. Hopefully the mobile game is has enough challenge for you, so you don't get too bored. I'm not going to be too worried about making this very accurate. The goal of this sketch is to capture the idea, not to have perfect line art. So I'm deliberately a bit rough here. I just want to try to capture the general idea of the design and the look and feel of the vehicle. And that line art here is, perspective is off. That's better. Hey Zalin, how's it going? Let's switch it up. You can't see the below. Oh. Hey, Bruno Romanos. Yeah, I mean, mobile game studio and smaller games, it tends to be a little bit more simpler, a little bit less dramatic in terms of scope. Um, one good thing, though, about mobile games compared to big studios is that mobile games don't take 3 years to make. You'll have like half a year, maybe, of one project, or half a year to a year, depending on scope of the mobile game. And then you'll start on a new one and on a new one. So in theory, you get to draw a lot of different things rather than 3 years of, or 6 months of pure concepting. Then you do like pretty pictures, then you do environments, then you do some UI icon. That's usually what happens when you're working in-house, is that you get delegated like a lot of bullshit things just because they don't have anyone else, and you are the creative person, right? And they get like, oh, we need an effect here, or one tend to do a lot of sporadic things when you sit on a project for three years. It's not, you're not gonna sit and do concepts for 3 years through the duration of the project. Kirill, yeah, exactly. It is a completely different challenge. But for me, I like doing simpler things. I've worked for many different types of games, and one of them being some mobile games, some kid games, like Call of Duty, Division. They're all different and different flavors, and um, the challenge when you design something simple is not the challenge of coming up with cool shit. It's coming up with strong enough simple things that is a good design. When you can only, let's like you do a character, the character doesn't all have all these mechanical cool Call of Duty stuff or whatever. It's like a jacket, pants, haircut, and a great face. And how do you make that look good? How do you make that recognizable? How do you make that memorable? And a lot of times, a lot of artists just take the shortcut. That's why there's a lot of shit looking, or not shit, but very generic looking games out there, especially on the mobile market. Is because the artist in question, first of all, obviously doesn't have like AAA 10-year experience in what they're doing. So in that sense, yes, there will be like a difference in quality, and that's it's that's what you would expect. So I'm not blaming the artists. I'm just saying that it is a challenge, and it's not an easy challenge to design something that is simple but look good. It's easier to um, hide a design in information, and it's harder to come up with something nice and clean when you only have a little bit of leeway of what you can do. French, Doom, yeah, Doom in simplified mobile game style is definitely a challenge. Hey DMT, how's it going? Welcome back. Kirill, yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of it. And whatever shape is there needs to be really carefully authored so that it's strong, recognizable, and memorable. And not just empty, you know. Like you can make pants like that. Everyone sees that that's pants, but maybe they are like that. You know, what are the what are the proportions? You can draw them significantly different 10 times over, and it could impact the final result drastically, even though they're just simple pants, you know. But yeah, anyway, everyone gets this. I'm preaching to the choir. Friendship. I had a challenge like that actually when I did my pixel art game. When I did my pixel art game, I only had like 30 to 40 pixels to work with, high. So you had to design characters that people recognized, not only recognized in terms of picture. You know, if you would put a screenshot of the game, they would go, "Oh, that game." You know, and memorable designs with clear and distinguished values and shapes, but also recognizable when you're playing the game, so that you know, oh, this is the jumping enemy, this is the running enemy, that color, you know, all these things, and you had a 30 pixels high image to work with, and you had to have variety, and you had to design, you know, all these things had to come into play. And that's a lot of things that you have to do when you're doing mobile games, even though it's simple, you know, it's not by any means triple A, but it still has to stand out. It still has to be recognizable and solid work, you know. And you don't have that much wiggle room to design a fully fledged, you know, like photorealistic character. You have less to work with, so it's a lot more pressure to get something right. Hey Miguel, how's it going? Good morning, sir. DMT, yeah, absolutely. There's a big difference when it comes to that, and there's also different scope. You know, also when you're not that experienced and you're not that like high-end artist with, you know, bunch of experience and all those things, you can't also demand a lot of money because you don't have the experience to do so. So that's why, for example, it's a great start or a great means to an end to go indie or mobile game studio. So you learn, you practice, because a lot of times it's also less pressure, right? There's less pressure to create the next Hollywood blockbuster design, right? The end all be all of action heroes. On a mobile game, it's like, okay, we spent 4 months producing this game. It looks good enough. We got far enough. It sold, you know, it sold pretty good. We made money. Let's jump on the next one. And then you got to start designing the next things. You have to produce all the items in there. It's a completely different workload, you know, compared to, let's say, a AAA game. You as a AAA concept artist in a big studio with 100 artists, you don't get to design a little bit of everything for the game. You tend to do one thing and one thing only, and then and you know, it's way more compartmentalized. Compartmentalized. Compart. a compartment. You know what I mean. Compartmentalized. that sounds wrong. I'm missing some letters in there. Compartmentalized. Yeah. Hey Amir, how's it going? Thanks, by the way. DMT, yeah, absolutely. I mean, usually you don't discuss rates. Because of many different reasons, right? Sometimes it's about guarding yourself. Um, don't want to look a fool. Um, none of your business. I keep my cards to myself, etc., etc. You know, so it's a little bit hard to say, "Oh, you're not saying your salary. You're ruining it for everyone else." Maybe the person doesn't like to do that. Maybe they don't like to talk about money. Maybe that's a thing between the clients, and maybe his clients are well-paying, selected client, and if I say that I work with Riot and I get X amount of money, um, maybe your best friend is also working for Riot, but he or her is making less money, but you still do the same work, and it could create, money is always the source of all evil, more or less, and that's why a lot of people are hesitant to talk about money. Um, it's like don't talk politics when you're having dinner with friends, you know. Usually is the case, right? It's this a little bit of the same kind of thing. Um, so I can understand a lot of people not talking about their rates publicly. Eric, Ricky, hello, how's it going, you lurker? Miguel, absolutely. A lot of artists will learn and experience more on indie because you get to do more. But AAA is like your is where the most money is, and the biggest glory is, and the biggest traction, most recognizable titles, and so on. It's where the fame is, more or less. And it's easy to say, no, your life will be more fruitful on indie because you're gonna get to do more. But no one's heard about Sam and the Magic Carpet. Everybody has heard about Call of Duty. Crested Skull. If you want to, have at it. I mean, personally, I would not. But if that floats your boat, do it. I'm not gonna tell you what you should do. But just know that painting furries for money can make you a lot of money, but it's not secure future. You might want to think about that too. Might be a great band-aid for the situation. In France. Oh, you work in video games? You're for Ubisoft. Yeah, that's more or less true. Yeah, absolutely, Kirill. Also, obviously, there's a lot of NDA involved, and indies tend to be a little bit more loose about it because they need to push um, marketing, because they don't have a marketing beast department like, let's say, Call of Duty, where they can be silent and then drum up a storm, right? Indies, they need to do it differently because they just don't have that budget. So that's why, for example, in indie games, the cards tend to be quite open and everything out in public to drum up over time interest, because they're a little bit less heard of, you know. DMT, yeah, I agree. I agree. I think there should be regulation in earning. It's a little bit of like a free market at the moment. I mean, Riot pays a lot for illustrations. I did some illustrations for them a couple of years ago, and they paid 5K for one illustration that took maybe a month or less to make. And the other, let's say, Wizard, they don't pay that well compared to Riot. But Riot is like a unicorn. They have so much money. They don't care. Hey, Frux. Both. Riot has money. They have so much money. And this was illustration, and they pay a lot for illustrations because it's the face, right? It's the face outwards. Nobody cares about concept art. Everybody cares about a wallpaper. Jival, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of money in splash art because it takes a long time, and there's a lot of rendering involved, versus concept art where you have less of a rate or higher rate, but for a shorter time. So let's say a concept art, you work 5 days, and you don't earn, let's say, you don't earn 8K, like let's say some Chinese splash art takes you, but that Chinese splash art might take 2 months of your time, which is 4,000 a month, which if you split that on a day rate, that's what, 200 a day, which is, as a freelancer, is not that much, 200 a day. Because you got to tax that, you got to pay for your own hospital bills and insurance, blah blah blah. And if you work full time at a studio, you get all that regardless of your salary, and then your salary, you know, is on top of that. So there's a lot of like give and take that you should consider. Blizzard, I think, pays pretty well. I haven't done work with Blizzard. Eric Ariki, yeah, absolutely. Within Riot, project to project have different budget, of course. Crested Skull is render, 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 thumbnail, 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 polish, 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 adjust this, change that, fix this, blah blah blah. It takes a long time, long time. DMT, yeah, absolutely, to some degree. I absolutely agree. Um, and there's also a lot of charlatans, like in the industry, like boasting about their skills, and they have a high rate, and they have a lot of hype behind them, but they are actually not good artists. I can name a Shame, but I'm not that kind of person. But let's say this person is a skilled artist, experienced artist, but the day rate that this artist has is ridiculous. Is ridiculous. Just because there's a name attached and that artist is actually an asshole. Which just boggles my mind, if I'm honest. But the clients don't know that this artist is an asshole. And they're like, ooh, cool name. I've heard about you. Here, take some money. Fresher. Hey, Fuchsia, how's it going? Ah, thank you. I'm playing around with this idea of a tunnel runner. I'm leaning towards this or that currently. I kind of like this too, but it's a little bit. I like the front a lot. I think I might take the front and put it on this. We'll see. But I'm most likely gonna do number 3 here. Captain Boss, how to calculate such contract? You first you gotta get a base for what you gotta earn a month to not die, and then add on top of that experience and skill. And at the beginning you might only earn just enough to make a living, but next contract you can go, all right, I have a contract under my belt, I can up my rate a little bit. If it's a returning client, you can do business with them, and if they're going to keep giving you business, you can say, okay, now I've done 3 contracts with you, or 6 months have passed, or a year have passed. Now I need to up my rate. And if they're happy with you, they're going to have no problem upping your rate. And then you can calculate, right? There's a new client approaching saying, hey, I really like the work you've done. Would you mind working for us? Then you give them your new rate, right? And then the next client comes after that contract is finished and like, oh, hey, we like your work. All right. I'm going to add a little bit on top because I have more experience now and I know what I'm doing. And then then you climb, and you should also consider, okay, I can earn a little bit less to start off to get the ball rolling, but I need to at least get to this hypothetical number to pay for tax. I don't want to, tax you should be calculated into the price, right? You're going to lose 30% or whatever. And so let's say 200 is bare. You don't gain money, but you don't die of starvation. You should add 30% on top of that, so that 30 goes to tax, so that you're always, so not so that you're 30% behind constantly. How would you go about doing a 1 to 2 hour sketch for a chapter of a book each day? I would just sketch out them. Give yourself like 10 minutes of sketching the idea, and then those rest of the time draw it again, or on top, and erase and draw and play around with it. And then you set the timer, and then blip blip blip, 1.5 hours has passed. Okay, then next chapter. Don't have a pressure that every chapter has to be something to call home about. Just do shit. Merici, if his skills are okay at best, but the artist, I mean, in question is very repetitive. Crested Skull. portfolio more than degree. Degree is just a means of knowing that they don't need to hold your hand. That's the biggest thing they want to get out of it, is like they want you to hit the ground running. If they're gonna give you a full-time job, they don't want to, they want you to just, you're gonna work on this, great. Day one, give me a pencil. I got this. Fuchsia, all right, yeah. I kind of like this as well. It feels brutal. And the idea of the concept that I set out to start concepting, you can go back on the YouTube archive underneath the stream. It's an idea of an IP of mine where they are Second World War, Inner Earth, Germans versus Americans with pressure suits and monsters and so on. So this idea is there are two people driving this. One guy maybe on the side laying down a phone cable in tunnels, in old lava tunnels, and the concept is idiotic speed. And I've been sketching them out, exploring the ideas, and taking you through the whole journey as I'm going along. So if it sounds like something interesting, you can go back in the YouTube archive and do a deep dive. But yeah, it's a fun project. Miguel. I don't name and shame people. I can't. It's not my issue. Frox, I have a little. I have a mobile studio. Captain Boss. Okay, let's say 300 per day. The client says okay, but if the client make many returns, he have to pay every day you worked on. Yes. If you pay 300 a day, oh, you want me to work one more day? Money. Friendship. Yeah, I think so too. It's more tangible design. Number one, it feels a little bit like haha funny car. Number two, comes off cool, but not necessarily World War II. This feels brutal and World War II and clunky, yet cool and unique. I think this is the one. Hey, about 12. Welcome back. Crested Skull. It's all about skill. If you become a great portrait artist that just has a specific flavor, and you're not one in 1,000 artists that draws the same way, there's always a market depending on how you do it, how you market yourself, and how you push and how long you've been doing it. You can say I'm going to paint with butter and became the best butter painter, making everybody want to buy your butter painting. It's arbitrary. It's all about your voice, skill, and time doing it, expertise. Like a character artist, there's thousands and thousands of character artists. There are a few that you can go, Aaron Beck, you know, standouts. And then there's a cluster underneath them with skills, and they do fantastic work. But they're starting to be a little bit gray. Then there's a massive bracket with a lot of gray artists that are just zero voice. They're getting up to the experience of starting to understand that narrative from yourself is valid and has a point, and you just can't do generic. But they don't have the mileage to get there yet, so they're practicing by working, and then 2-3 years later they will be at that point. and you can never really. There's a few outliers that start out with a fantastically strong voice, and they jump the hierarchy a lot, and they're really high up on the pile of artists. But generally, what that does and what happens is like give them 4 or 5 years. They don't evolve past that initial jump, and they stagnate. And a lot of other artists with those 5 years, they build up experience and skills and surpass those outliers that have this magical skill set combination in time and trends and so on. And few of them who do those jumps, they adapt and continue rising, and those are the ones that become recognizable over time. How much do you bench press, sir? Crescent Skull. About that much, and then a little bit on top. Frogs, you can earn money today with your skill set. It's just finding clients, and then you're not going to make like 5,000 a day or 5,000 a drawing like for Riot. Hey DMT, cheers for that. Fuchsia, yeah, I know. Personally, I do a lot of organic designs, way more than hard surface. You just got to practice. I mean, obviously, these are not like draftsmanship of a master industry designer. I haven't paid any attention to the quality of the lines and construction. Um, but it's the same idea, same principles. You just have to slightly approach it differently, and it's practice. You have to put mileage into drawing mechanical things. Take Bose here in the chat, for example. He's great at robots, but tell him to draw, a baby, and he's going to probably struggle. Frenchy French. Yeah. Frogs. Of course, you can always find someone. Your mom. Crystal Skull. I tend not to because I'm busy and I have a lot of meetings. I jump back and forth in meetings all day, and calls and client stuff, and I have a 30 minutes set aside for this in the morning. A baby, yeah, Captain Boss. A baby. A baby. Alright, let's find someone to raid. Enough blabbing from me. Gum flapping. Flop, 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 flop. What's Tim Remmers doing? He's doing a new character. A cat. No. Let's raid someone else. And we're gonna raid. What's her name? Okay, we're gonna raid Kiro Kerosene. She's drawing. Looks like a good start. We'll see what that is. DMT. Yeah, of course. It's obvious stuff, Master basics. All right, I'm gonna do the outro, then take you to the raid. So don't go anywhere. Have a good night if you're in that part of the world. Have a fantastic day in this part of the world. Flap, 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 gum flap, gum flapping. Anyways, have a good one. See you tomorrow. We're gonna decide on which to take further of these 3 tools, everyone.